Hello everybody and welcome back to Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson, and today I have a raid in the rack video for you because I was out doing a little bit of shopping and then I noticed a little plant that kept calling out to me, take me home, take me home, take me home. And I was thinking, right, I've had plenty of these plants in the past and I still have some, but this little one caught my eye and I couldn't say no anyway. And I'll tell you the reasons why when I bring it in for a closer look. So it's the plant that's sitting on the side beside me here. And I was looking for a plant that could be in this corner where it's actually a shaded corner. I have two windows in my crystal library here where I'm sitting right now. I have a west facing window next to me here and a north facing window in front of me behind the camera. So this plant is in the corner here where it's a bit shaded, but it does very well in shady conditions as long as it does get some natural light filtering into the room around it. And plus, it has this lovely salt lamp just underneath it. So let me bring it in for a closer look. So here it is. It's not hard to see what this plant is, right? This is a favorite of many houseplant collectors out there. And well, this is the one and only Monstera deliciosa small form, otherwise known as Monstera deliciosa Borsigiana. And the thing that caused me to want to buy this little lovely plant is, despite its size, it has already a lot of slits and fenestration in its young leaves here. So if I should show you the leaves compared to the size of my hand, there's my hand. That is the largest leaf, and this is a whole new leaf. It's lighter green compared to the other ones here. And you can see this plant started off with these younger heart-shaped leaves down here at the bottom with no fenestrations and no slits in them whatsoever. And that is the way young Monsteras start out with their immature leaves. So if you have a plant that's a Monstera deliciosa and it only has leaves like this, well, give it some time. The more it grows out, the more it will start maturing into leaves that get a few slits and fenestrations like this one here. And then they go on and they get more like this leaf here. And then look at this lovely new leaf that's come out here. Isn't that just gorgeous? Look at me in this jungle of Monstera. Oh, I love this plant. So yes, you can see why I had to get it. Look at that leaf closer up. And the one underneath, this one, you can see down here. Less fenestrations, but still beautiful. And it's a whole jungle of a plant. And if I look inside the pot, it looks like they placed 3 cuttings into this one pot. So that's wonderful. And down the bottom, I can see the plants are growing out aerial roots on the stems, the lower stems in the plant. And those are important for Monstera plants because they absorb moisture from the air and nutrients, and they absorb gases from the air, and then they reach down into the soil, and then they turn into roots that have auxiliary roots on them as well. And the plant can crawl along the ground in its natural environments and then attach itself to trees or bushes or a building or wherever the roots can attach themselves to help the plant start to climb up. So there are a few differences with these plants. Now, I have a large Monstera deliciosa, I call it my king, and it gets leaves that can get up to 1 meter big all the way around. Huge leaves, full of fenestrations and slits, absolutely beautiful. Those plants are monsters. So if you really want to get yourself a Monstera deliciosa, you're going to have space. But they grow slightly slower than these Monstera Borsigiana plants like this one here. They can grow out a lot more leaves and they can grow more in a kind of bushy form, and then they can grow up and vine out much quicker than the normal Monstera deliciosa, because the Monstera deliciosa small form is a subspecies of the original Monstera deliciosa, and they do have slightly different growth habits. So these get thinner stems, but they can still get quite big leaves their leaves can reach up to around 1/2 meter. So they're usually between 30 and 50 centimeters in diameter when they are mature. But for the most part, you'll get plants like this with these smaller leaves, and they might get leaves that get to around 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters if you're lucky in your home. But they are quite fast growing, and you can get yourself a lovely bush in no time, actually. So there is one big difference between this plant and the Monstera deliciosa, and that is where the actual leaf meets the petiole. This part of the plant, the geniculum, the area just underneath the leaf here, on the original Monstera deliciosa, it has ripples on it. And you will see that very, very clearly on all of the petioles, there are ripples. But on the Monstera deliciosa Borsigiana, small form, it's completely smooth and there are no ripples. And the ripples on the original Monstera deliciosa are there to give the leaf and the petiole flexibility. And I think it's because the plant has much bigger leaves, and in wind and so forth, they need to be able to bend and form themselves a little bit easier and to turn and switch around to where the light is. So they have these extra ripples to help them with that. So anyway, I wanted to get this plant just because I thought it looked absolutely lovely. And it actually wasn't that cheap. I got it in a local supermarket and it cost me 200 Swedish kronor for this little plant here. And I didn't care. This plant was calling me, and so I had to get it. So just a couple of basic care tips that I've learnt through my experiments with this plant in my home. Now, I found these plants, both the Monstera, the large form and the small form, to be quite difficult to keep happy indoors here in southern Sweden with my lighting and temperature or whatever, humidity, whatever it may be, the different circumstances of my homes, especially in my apartment. This plant has not been doing so well for me. They get yellowing leaves, they get attacked by insects, thrips especially. Absolutely love this plant. So if you've got a lot of plants together, I'd be really careful with the insect infestation that you could get on them. Other than that, they are resilient. If you have just one plant and you can keep on top of it, then it shouldn't be much problem for you. They like dappled, bright, indirect dappled light. They can take a few hours of bright light as long as it's not burning light through a window. So between 3 to 6 hours, but not burning in any way, just bright, direct light. So that will keep them happy, but mostly they are fine in a low light situation, which means not too dark. They do need to be getting some natural light or artificial light of some type to keep them the most happy. And you will find that out because the leaves will always turn towards any light source and they will stretch out towards that direction and they move around quite quickly to get towards the light. This plant, I will be keeping it in its plastic nursery pot that I've bought it in now, especially now as it's the winter. It's not the time for me to go in and start repotting this plant because I know that I will stress it out and it will probably start failing. It's got plenty of space in the pot it's in, and the general consensus would be to leave your plant in the same pot as long as possible. If the plant is happy, if it's producing new leaves and it's not completely root bound, leave your plant alone, let it adjust to your environment. But when it comes to a point where the plant has circulated around the edge of the pot and you can see roots coming out of the bottom and it does need to be repotted, then repot it into a new pot that is only slightly bigger than the pot it's in so that you don't end up surrounding it with too much soil that could end up getting waterlogged and rot out your plant. These plants are very prone to root rot if they are overwatered. So I would suggest when you repot it to plant the plant, if you can, into a terracotta pot with aerating soil. So if you get some kind of gardening mix or aroid mix and mix into that some materials to aerate the soil and to keep it loose so that it doesn't compact. You can put lacquer balls in there, you can put perlite in there, you can put some sand in there, you can put all sorts of different things in to mix it up in the soil. Some areas of the world where it's more humid and so forth, they might put in some kind of orchid bark and all sorts of things. So you can experiment with an awful lot, Just make sure that your plant doesn't get oversaturated with water, but conversely, don't let your plant dry out too much either, because they also don't like that. Their leaves will wrinkle, their leaves will start, especially indoors, drying out around the edge. You'll get browning and yellowing around the edge of the leaves, and they'll start dying back if they're underwatered as well. So you really need to keep a good watering regime to keep the plant happy. They don't really like lots of water and then no water for a whole month or so, and then they're stressed out in both ways. So you need to kind of keep a good flow, and that means when the first 2-3 inches of the soil is dry, if you do the finger test, then you can go in and water your plant. Or the best thing would be to get a water gauge, of course, and then test different areas of the soil, not just one point, because sometimes it's wet in one area and not in another. Go around and test many different areas in the soil to get a general consensus of how dry, moist or wet your soil is, so that you know what to do. So one thing I really have learned is that I've been in when I bought these plants and I've repotted them quite quickly, and I've put them in terracotta pots and new soil and hope that they're going to be happy, and it's stressed them out. So this time I've bought this plant, it's beautiful, and I want to experiment by leaving it in its same pot, and I'm going to leave it in this pot for as long as I can get away with it, to see if this keeps this plant happy and lush as it is right now for as long as possible before I go in and do anything else. Just shine over the leaves, spray them off with water. If you have a smaller plant like this, it's much easier. You can go in and you can shower your plant off. Or if you can't move it, it's a bigger plant, then you can go and wipe off the leaves with a cloth, or spray them over now and then with a spray bottle, just to get some of the dust off the leaves, because they do collect dust quite easily. So this plant, as I said, is a lovely plant, and everybody's excited about this plant. Everybody loves this plant. It's a plant that's so easy to propagate as well. You will be able to see where the aerial roots come out, and you'll be able to see where there's a node area on your plant. Between two nodes, you can go in and prune off a part of the stem when it's bigger, the plant. In between the two nodes on the internode, you can put that part with the aerial root straight into a soil mix and keep it slightly moist, and your plant will grow out. Or you can put it into water and watch the roots grow out, but don't let the roots get too long, because then they become water roots, they become brittle, frail, and they have a really hard time adapting to being put into soil after. Especially if you don't keep that soil slightly moist, but then it's very difficult because you don't want the soil getting too wet and you don't want it getting too dry, otherwise the plant will suffer. So if you can get away with doing it directly into soil and the roots growing out, getting used to that soil straight away, then it will be a better bet. But many people do go in and propagate this plant with water propagations. You can also do air layering. And air layering would be very good. You get a bag or plastic bottle or something like that, any kind of material that you can see through, and place that around a node where there is a aerial root coming out, and you will see the roots easily growing out into whatever medium you put inside, like sphagnum moss that keeps moisture very easily, or you can put some kind of soil directly around and seal that in and let the plant just grow its roots, and then you can prune that off and you'll have a whole new plant ready to go straight away. So as I said, I do have the large Monstera deliciosa, and now I have another one of these smaller ones, and I am going to let this live in the corner behind me here and do its thing, and I am going to enjoy it so much because it's so beautiful. So I just wanted to share that, just a quick little video about this much loved, beautiful Monstera deliciosa Borsigiana, or otherwise known as small form. And I suggest you go out and get yourself one if you don't have one. They can be found many places. They're very popular, the smaller form. The larger form, the Monstera deliciosa, is much more difficult to find because it's a much bigger plant. It needs a lot more space in nurseries, garden centres and so forth, and they grow into monsters, and so they're not as suitable for smaller homes because they will quickly grow into a huge monster that will take over a corner or an area or even a room in your home. But this plant can be kept more like a little pot plant like this. You can let it grow out and start vining up, but otherwise you can go in and take cuttings and give away plants to people as well, or whatever else you decide to do with them. So for us that have homes where we can only have these plants indoors, we really do need to be careful during the winter months. I found that these plants really do suffer quite a lot indoors during the winter with the lower light conditions, with the drier air quality indoors when you have radiators or any other kind of heating on. So it would be good to keep some kind of humidity and moisture around the plants. And I found out that especially my large Monstera deliciosa, I put it outside all summer last year, and that worked fabulously for that plant. It produced me 2 lovely new leaves. It started perking up because it really did start deteriorating indoors and getting yellow and getting attacked by insects and so forth. And it appreciated being outside for the summer. So I will be putting my Monstera plants outside for the whole summer again at my crystal cottage here against the wall on the eastern side of my house, where they get a little bit of filtered light during the morning areas because I have high trees around. They get dappled light that comes in onto them directly, and then they're mostly in the shade with the bright light of the sun circulating around the house, but not directly on the plants. And that really did keep them happy. And they grew out and they flushed up and they started growing with the leaves out and up, and I became very, very happy. So I am really looking forward now for, well, it's January now, and I won't be able to put them out here until probably late May, and then they will be out for June, July, August, September, and maybe into October before I have to bring them in again. So they'll get a good 5 months, if not more, outside, and then I know that I'll be able to help these plants get through the long winter months indoors. Because here it gets to minus 15 degrees or so in southern Sweden, and these plants can't take much less than around the 16 degrees Celsius, and they'll be fine indoors as well. So that was it. Let's have another closer look at this plant before I end my video. Look at that leaf. Who doesn't get excited by the look of a new Monstera leaf? And then this one, and then this one, and then these, and oh, it's just so gorgeous. So all I can say is go out and raid the rack and get yourself a lovely Monstera plant and be happy. So all I have to say now is thank you very much once again for watching Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. Please remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when my next video will be coming up, and I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.